the promise of God's presence in your life. His desire to touch this world through you. And thus, folks, we intentionally plan to share. We intentionally plan to serve and give of ourselves. And with that, God does amazing things. Phillips Brooks was a wonderful Christian writer, a great preacher of a century ago. He once told this story about his father. And we learn a lot from those who come before us, those we watch, attitudes, spirits that they have. He said his father lived on a salary of $800 a year and with a family of 11 growing children. It amazed Phillips Brooks that his family lived on so little, but he knew he watched his mom and his dad to be good managers of what they had. And he remembered how blessed and how content their home life was. That at the heart of it wasn't a bunch of things, but what was all important was the family, the friends, the community. He remembered how worship was a weekly event as a family, and how his dad would sing those hymns from the depths of his heart, how he would sing out, and how he would give that offering with gusto as it came by. And he did so with a smile. Because at the heart of his life was this sense that from God he came, and God was with him. Because Phillips Brooks remembered his father saying once at the kitchen table when all the family had gathered together, something that made a very deep impression on his young mind. Having poured his tea into the saucer, as was the Scandinavian way to let it cool, his father was resting his two elbows on the table. And Brooks's mother sat opposite of him at the other end of the table, and she said in a gentle yet a concerned way that the bills were due. And that indeed she didn't see how in the world they were going to get along. And at this statement of despair, of concern, Phillips Brooks' father dropped his hands to the table, and his eyes sparkled. He said, "My dear, I have trusted God for 40 years, and He's never forsaken me. I am not going to distrust Him now. He leads us in this life, and He will lead us on to eternity. God is present. We will be okay. He will provide a way, and I will do what I must. We will do what we must." And that woke young Phillips up. It sank into him, folks. During his early adult and married life, Phillips Brooks was a very sickly man. Illness came upon him. Life wasn't easy. All forms of limitations and trouble were upon him. But he writes how he never forgot that scene at that kitchen table that one evening, and that sentence, "I have trusted God for 40 years, and He has never forsaken me. And I'm not going to distrust Him now." Brooks would add, he said, "What a difference faith in Jesus Christ can make here and now. What a difference faith in Christ can make here and now as we live our lives with eternity in mind. Friends, I'm glad to come into God's courts this morning. I am every Sunday, every time we gather, I am so glad to come into God's court to worship and to hear these marvelous promises once again that from God we came, to God we shall one day return. That God is present with you and me here and now, and that He so loved us that He gave His Son Christ. Stewardship isn't an evil word. It is a response, and the only appropriate response to God's goodness. I know it's a rough and tumble life out there, and it's easy to become discouraged. But folks, next Sunday, we're going to gather for Consecration Sunday. We are going to gather for a celebration brunch, both of which are going to lift up God's work in and through our lives and in and through the life of this congregation. Christ, compassion, community. That is what we are about. That is who we are. Be assured that God's far, far from being finished with us as individuals and as a congregation. If you have the faith of but a mustard seed, and we do have that faith, miracles can and do happen in our lives. Miracles can and do happen through our lives and around our lives as we receive His love and as we share. So folks, next Sunday, come. Let us be renewed. Let us be recharged.